I enjoy all eras of comic book artists, but I usually cover more modern artists. So I wanted to cover somebody from the golden age, and that comic book artist is Mort Meskin. One of them, just wow, like very ahead of his time. There were a lot of guys at this period of time who were very ahead of their time. I actually learned about this guy from watching an interview from Carmine Infantino. And Mort Meskin was somebody that Carmine Infantino really looked up to and wanted to draw like. So that if that's the case, then he must be pretty damn good, right? So I'm just gonna take a look at this book here. I don't know when Mort Meskin was an artist. I know he was from 1940s to the 1960s, so very early. Probably around during, I would say, what was it, the Hal Foster days? One of the original guys who was around in comic book art. So we're kind of taking a look at his earlier stuff, which is very cool. I love it when art books have this kind of stuff. So you can look at their growth from when they were first beginning to the point where obviously they are now. Or where they were at the time. The thing that I like about this book is that it actually has like pencils, which is very cool. We'll get to those in a moment, but I also love the very vintage art feel. Very much of its time. So I think this was made by, was it made by Fantagraphics? They make very good stuff if it's made by Fantagraphics. I believe it is Fantagraphics. Well, let's actually check real quick. Yeah, Fantagraphics. So very high quality book here, but great work, man. I love looking at this classic stuff, especially in like a bigger format, probably than what it came out as. Zoom out there. There we go. So we can kind of see it all. I also like that you can kind of see the ink process. You know, I think of Jack Kirby as probably one of the greatest artists of all time. You know, and people kind of were like, oh yeah, Jack Kirby was the guy who made comic books more dynamic. But man, Mort Meskin had some dynamic pieces, and I imagine this was before Jack Kirby if he was working in the 40s. I love that, the movement of the figure. Yeah. I just love this. It's so cool to look at this older art. And then you have sort of the inked piece, the finished piece, and then the inked. Very cool. I just love the way he drew anatomy too. I know I harp on anatomy, but you know, solid anatomy is just so important. But I feel like every artist that you see in comics or you know any kind of art that involves the figure, they understand anatomy. I'd be very shocked if they didn't. There's a group of artists that were not very good with anatomy in the '90s and late '80s, but yeah, they were popular. So got some boxing stuff going on there. Yeah, I love that drawing. Such a cool drawing. Very dynamic stuff. Very, very dynamic stuff. And those waves. That's such a... man. I don't know why more people don't talk about Mort Meskin. Like, they talk about guys like Hal Foster and Alex Raymond and Alex Toth. Nobody talks about Mort Meskin. And I don't know why. If it wasn't for watching an old interview with Carmine Infantino, I never would have figured out about him. And I picked this art book up for, like, nothing. And then you look at this stuff and you go, man, how is this guy not, talked about? So I'm assuming these are pencils, but they darkened it up a bit. I love stuff like this, like looking at the process. I mean, if you're becoming an artist, I mean, you can look at this for forever. And there's a lot of material in this book. And this is kind of interesting because I know Stan Lee's big thing was the reason why he made Spider-Man was because, the kid was always the sidekick. And it seems like this guy, obviously, kid, got his own book. It was not successful, apparently. It's kind of a lame design, but still, very cool character. Love that. I love anytime you can get like an ink next to a colored piece. I wish they would do like pencil. So we got more black and white stuff. Great usage of negative space. Great usage of shadow and ink. Inking is a whole different monster that I haven't even tackled yet. So I'm excited when that day comes. That's a very cool cover. I know Western comics were definitely a thing back in the day. You look at some of those old Jack Kirby Western comics. But then again, yeah, I mean, Jack Kirby was doing comics in the 40s, so I mean, these guys probably were actually around at the same time, now that I think about it. Man, look at that. That paper must have aged very poorly. And these are unpublished pencils from a Western strip. Man, this stuff is... I kind of want to zoom in. Take a look at this stuff. I'll just move the book up and down. Yeah, what a great penciler. That's a very cool piece there. That had to have been blown up a little bit. Great expression too. See, that's the thing is I love any artist who can do a great expression. Those eyes are a little bit off, but still looks good. I don't know what kind of paper this was on, but it did not age very well, it seems like. Oh, sorry, I have to keep zooming out, zooming in. I love these extras. Like, you get. I mean, I like pencils in general because pencils are so difficult to find for whatever reason. I'm assuming a lot of people must have inked directly on. So it's very difficult to find those pencils, but when you can get them, man, I love that. I'm sure Bob Kane probably stole that. I don't know how these comic books read, but they look great. So we got some more pencils here. This is kind of stuff that will make you a way better artist. It's just looking at the process, how it works. These are thumbnails, clearly they have to be, but they're pretty tight. They're pretty tight thumbnails. Jesus, pretty tight thumbnails, and yeah, they look great. Great forearms there. You even got some watercolor pieces, it looks like. That's the thing is I love it when they show even the stuff that they kind of do on the side while they're learning to become a better artist. Because these guys were drawing and painting and inking and doing any kind of artwork all the time. Yeah, look at that. Yeah, it boggles my mind that he's not more known. Even his advertisement work is really great. And they had Diet Pepsi that far back then. Wow. When the hell is this? Wow. Doing some war stuff. Doing some army stuff. That's the thing is I feel like when you're a freelance artist back then, if you wanted to work in that advertisement field, because that was the real deal, you know. If you're working as an advertiser, you're the real deal, I guess, back then. Oh, this funny book shit. You know, that's the thing about Mort Meskin. Look at that. That's very cool. So Meskin felt he struggled with rendering faces in his personal work. He drew them by the dozens. Oh, in his personal work, he drew them by the dozens. So he must have drawn a lot of faces. Rendering a face is very difficult. I like that. Very, like, flowy. Just kind of, like, messing around with the figure. I like this, man, just like he got very experimental with stuff. It wasn't all about just comics. Got some fine art stuff there. Very cool. I wish I knew the dates on these. This must have been the period where he was like, okay, I made enough money, I can kind of experiment now. Or maybe this was just stuff he was doing in his free time. Is that the figure? Moving the figure around? I can't see. It looks like the figure. Looks like he's just using blotches to kind of move it around, separating it by pieces. That's what it looks like to me. Very difficult to tell. I actually should probably read this book at some point rather than just look at the pictures. Yeah, that's the thing, is like Fantagraphics is very good at like making these art books because they add a lot of stuff and a lot of insight. But yeah, it's very cool. I mean, they got every era. They got his comic book work, they got his fine arts work, they got his pencils, they got his inks. I mean, they pretty much tried to get everything they possibly could. I really do wish that there was just a part 2 of this book, because I could look at Martin Meskin's artwork all day. But yeah, a name that, like, I don't know, I feel like it's just kind of lost behind the Kirbys and the Fosters and the Toths. I think, it's mind blowing to me that more people have not brought this guy up. But thank God for Carmine Infantino. Like a random interview I watched on YouTube, and him talking about that Mort Meskin was somebody that he really admired and wanted to draw like. So, I mean, you can even look at Golden Age stuff, and it's very inspiring, and it's very, very good. Very, very good work. And I feel like this is the time where, comic books held more weight than comic books do now. I feel like comic books now just don't matter to a lot of people. I actually find myself not buying modern comics, which is quite sad, but it's just like to me, it doesn't look anything like this. But then again, I could maybe be one of those closed-minded people, or just not knowledgeable enough of more modern day stuff. But I always find myself looking back at the classics, stuff that I had never heard of before, and artists that I had never heard of before, and all the best ones that I seem to get recommended are ones from, 1980 and before, or in the 1980s and before. So, yeah, great stuff. Mort Meskin, check him out. Just a solid artist, not talked about, super underrated. And I mean, I'm sorry, but he's around in the 40s, so I would consider him one of those godfathers of comic book artists from that time where comic books were just blowing up at an amazing rate. So do I think he should be in the list with the Kirbys and the Ditkos and the Johnny Craigs and the Hal Fosters and the Wally Woods and all those guys? To me, yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. Just kind of taking a look at someone who, in my opinion, is an absolute total comic book legend.